It's time for Bourbon with Friends, the bourbon podcast that never takes itself too seriously. Pull up a chair, grab a glass, and remember, a bourbon with friends can change the world. Here we go.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Bourbon with Friends. Myself, Adrian, and Martin are here to talk about whiskeys from around the world and if a bourbon with friends can change the world. How's everybody going?
Good, man. How are you?
Yeah.
Adrian,
Good.
how you feeling?
I'm great, actually. I'm doing well.
You sound great. I have a bone to pick with you, Brian.
Oh, no.
There's literally a sticker on my computer right here that says, "Don't say dude."
I wonder why.
Yeah, because how many was it? 160. So now, like, I'm like in
65.
in professional settings such as this, I'm restricting myself. I'm a 40-year-old man who says dude, rad. I sometimes say cowabunga from time to time, you know, like a turtle.
Yeah.
No, I never say that. I've never said that ever. But no, like I literally like looked down at my desk and I totally forgot that I had that sticker there. So yeah, I'm trying to stop, man. I'm trying to make myself better in life. Really, that's what I'm trying to do.
Slow corrections are good
So,
corrections.
yeah, those slow. Yeah. So yeah. Well, we've got a really cool show. So Brian, go ahead. I feel like this is definitely something that you've been itching to introduce here.
Oh, I have. Based off of their spirits that we've tasted and gone through so far, that they graciously sent us, and everything about them. It's Heritage Distilling. They're absolutely phenomenal. We have Justin and Jennifer here. I am not going to try to pronounce their last name because I guarantee you I'm going to mess it up personally. But they're absolutely phenomenal. Stiefel. Okay, perfect.
Stiefel.
Justin and Jennifer Stiefel, who know everything about whiskey comparative to the rest of us, and we're just youngerlings listening and learning from them. Seems like. So, Justin, Jennifer, welcome on. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Brian. Have you ever watched Caddyshack?
I have, yes.
Yeah. So there's a line in that movie where Chevy Chase and the judge are talking, and the judge says, "You know, I'm no slouch," and Chevy Chase says, "Don't sell yourself short, Judge. You're a tremendous slouch." So the idea that you're going to try and say that we are the experts when you're hosting the podcast, I'm gonna demur a little bit. Okay.
Oh, there's the law degree coming out and just making us a little bit less.
And Martin, I do have to sympathize with you a little bit using rad, stuff like that. We've got teenagers, and so in our house it's Riz.
Oh, see,
goodness.
I still don't know. Well, I know Riz is charisma. I've learned recently.
Yes.
I don't know what cap means. I have no idea.
Truth.
No lie.
Oh, is that really what it means?
No lie.
Oh, wow. I'm learning so much.
I need to talk about Ohio.
Ohio is something that is, my understanding is when they refer to something as Ohio, it's just like very, very weak and uninteresting.
Wow, a whole state.
Yeah.
A whole state just gone. People in Ohio are sitting like, why do they keep saying that about us?
For you in Indiana, it makes you feel pretty good.
It does, actually, I'll be honest with you. Like, we have a lake.
I love it.
That's awesome. All right.
Well, I think we should start with maybe you guys just giving us a little bit of a background about who you are and where you come from.
Sure.
Yeah, so I can
if you
start.
Don't mind.
Stiefel. So Justin and I have been married for 27 years and actually started, our story starts in Anchorage, Alaska in high school. And after graduation, we both went to the University of Idaho, and 4 years later ended up in Washington, D.C. And Justin has a chemical engineering degree and a law degree from Catholic University. And I went and got my master's degree from education, which, obviously leads you to distilling with, an elementary education degree. But after 13 years in Washington, D.C. and 3 kids later, we moved back to the Pacific Northwest, and Justin's, getting ready to go in-house as an attorney for one of his clients. And we were kind of having dinner one night, and I said, "Is this going to be amazing? Is this what you always wanted to do?" And he looked at me and he was like, "No, I think this is going to be awful. This is not what I want to do." And I said, "Well, this isn't going to work. What did you have in mind?" And he said, "Well, 2009, it became legal to distill in the state of Washington." And I didn't really know what he was talking about. He said, "I want to open a distillery." And I looked at him and I was like, I'm not really a beer fan. And then we immediately got in our powder blue minivan with our 3 kids and drove to the liquor store. And he's like, "I want to do this. I want to make whiskey and gin and vodka." And I immediately said, "Do you even know how to do that? And is that legal?" So that's where it all started. I had our daughter on my hip.
It's a fair question, to be honest. Like, do you know how to do this?
Thank you.
Well, I mean, based off of the 2 degrees he has, so the legal aspect and the chemistry aspect, it's the 2
There's
things
at least,
you need
yeah.
in whiskey. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I felt more confident about, understanding what distilling was at the very beginning. So that's kind of where the story began. And so we were at our friend's house, Drew and Sara Kellerman, and we're in the backyard, and we had 5 kids between us, and they're all running around. It's the Pacific Northwest. And so you were almost to the land of the midnight sun. It's, 10 o'clock at night. The sun is still up and fire pits raring, and Justin and I are sitting here, and we're wanting to broach the subject with our dear friends about, we kind of want to make this. What do you think? And so Justin's swirling his glass of whiskey, and he goes, "I think we can make this. We can make it better." And so that's when we kind of laid out the business plan with Drew and Sara and got some cigars, and we were deep in our cup. And the next day we ended up calling him and saying, "We're really serious. We have a business plan. You want to see it?" And so that's kind of how it started, with late night campfire and kind of a dream to do something bigger in life, and kind of go from there.
Very cool. So your co-founders, Sara and Drew Kellerman, correct? So
Yes.
They're veterans. Since we know that, can you talk a little bit about what maybe prompted you guys to do the special operations salute line of whiskeys?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So started 8 years ago now. We were approached by one of our Cast Club members, Scott Olson, who happened to be Green Beret, active duty, stationed at Joint Base Lewis McChord, which is about 25 minutes from us, and home of the 1st Special Forces Group. And so if anybody is in special operations in the Army, and if they are deployed to Asia, then they end up running through 1st Special Forces Group. And their tagline or motto is "First in Asia." In fact, the very first casualty, very first service member who died in the Vietnam War was a Green Beret from the 1st Special Forces Group here. So we were approached by them. We'd love if you made us a whiskey, special bottling. So we got together with them, and we did. We released that 8 years ago, raised a bunch of money for the Gold Star Kids program on base, and for their memorial foundation, and for college scholarships. And then year 2 rolled around, and they asked for another bottling, which we did. And then year 3. And by the time year 3 rolled around, we started getting requests from around the country: 5th group, 7th group, 3rd group, 101st, 82nd, asking us for bottles and labels. And we were small. We couldn't figure out how to do it. And so we just kept doing it with the first group. So over the last 8 years, we've raised about $150,000 just for the 1st Special Forces Group and their charities at JBLM. And last year, we started getting much more serious inquiries. People from the highest levels within Special Operations Command saying, we've watched what you've done, and we want you to think about doing something. So we spent a lot of time planning the launch. We got introduced to a gentleman named Michael Solovey, who's one of the top military sketch artists in the world. He is retiring this year. It will be 30 years as active duty special operations. He's in special ops. He's stationed somewhere just outside of DC right now. And we lined up with him, and we created this, what we think is a really cool and unique packaging, especially in the craft space. And that is this 1st edition special operations SOF edition, geared around the Army, with a lithograph on the inside from Michael Solove. And the tube, we spent a lot of time, talked to a lot of people to make sure we got everything to be exactly right and authentic. And then we signed up with a bunch of partners. We've created a very cool affiliate marketing program. We now have 21 signed nonprofits, some of the highest level and some that are very small and local. And with every bottle sold, we're raising money for these charities. And we're getting ready to replicate this same model for, we have a partnership with the Marine Raider Foundation, Brian, former Marine.
Oh, awesome.
One of our shareholders, his dad was a Marine Raider, fought in World War II in the Pacific.
Holy cow.
Just passed away 3 months ago at the age of 94.
Wow.
He sits on the board of the Marine Raider Foundation. So we're gearing up. We've got a very cool program lined up with that. I don't know if you saw a recent release, the 3-bottle set for D-Day.
D-Day, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So we worked with the artist, Michael Solove, and we did the sketches. He did the sketches. We put on the labels for air, land, and sea. And we have some very cool stories about the phone calls we got when we launched that product just a month ago, right? Because the 80th anniversary of D-Day was last week.
Yeah.
Right.
And so we're humbled. We're honored people want us to do this. And as I told our team last year when we got approached about this kind of bigger opportunity was we have the credibility because of what we've done the last 7 years at that time. We have the ability to do more. And I think when you have the credibility and the ability, you also have the responsibility to do more. And so that's why we launched that. And the team has done yeoman's work to really put a lot of thought, energy, and authenticity into it. And to the point where the Green Beret Foundation took 3 cases of the D-Day bottles with them to Normandy. They were bottles were present throughout all of the ceremonies. They're featuring it in this 6-part miniseries podcast that they're getting ready to launch. They asked us to be one of the official partners of their 30-minute documentary on D-Day, the Jedburgh groups that we just launched in 200 TV stations last week across the country. And then we got a couple really cool phone calls, like the head admiral for all of naval warfare operations was invited to go to the ceremony in Normandy, and they were looking for a gift to bring, and it had to be made in America, and it had to be unique. And they found our C edition of the D-Day bottles, and so they bought bottles, and that became the official gift of the U.S. government from the head of naval operations for the U.S. to the head of naval operations to the French Navy at the ceremony in Normandy last week. So just some cool things that tell us we're on the right path for what we're doing. And by the way, we also got to be raising some money to do some amazing things for a lot of charities that for groups of people who frankly need more support.
Yeah, that really, I mean, I'm sure that gives your work a lot of purpose, and it's got to be a wonderful thing to be a part of. So I think all 3 of us here have a little bit of this Army Special Operations Forces support. So I thought maybe we could talk a little bit about, the nose palate finish on that. For me, I thought it had a very smoky flavor to it. I don't know what you guys thought, Martin and Brian.
Well, I've been sitting here. I tried some the other night, and I actually got to take it. One thing I like to do, just because at some point I've tried enough whiskeys that I like when other people who are not super familiar with some like the more craft stuff. I've got friends who are just getting into whiskey and getting into bourbons, and I try to push single malt Scotch quite a bit because that's kind of my original love. And I actually took this bottle over to a little friend get together over the weekend, and it was crazy popular, which was fantastic because I'm like, they'd obviously never heard of this. I mean, they barely heard of most craft distillers and things like they're still like Jack Daniels, which is great, but it's nice to show them the larger world. And it was very well received. And I kind of started jotting down notes as we're sitting around like our own campfire, oddly enough, having cigars and hanging out. So I'm sitting there like writing notes. And one that like really stuck out to me was, and I know it's probably coming more from the rye, is that there's just like a very like almost like a lemon lime note that comes out of it that I really love. And I love finding different notes like that. And I've become a rye fan over the last couple, really just like a year and a half at this point. And I've loved diving into it and kind of finding that bridge over from Scotch, because I feel like there is such a a similarity between things, like a malted barley and rye. They're both very fiery grains. And there's a lot of flavor in there. And so like when I find similar notes that I find in Scotch to this, I think it's really cool. And that was the one that stuck out to me the most. But it's fantastic. It's got a great nose. I was sitting here, I don't know if you guys saw, nosing it for about like 5-6 minutes, like to each nostril, just trying to get different things. But that's the one that stuck out to me the most.
Well, I want to give a notes, but I also want to bring in the two other co-founders who just jumped in. So I'm excited for this. Drew,
Great
Sara,
segue.
thank you so much for coming on. And thank you guys both for your service of what you guys are doing currently for the U.S. military, for the veteran service, and just everybody out there that needs this help. So thank you.
It's our privilege to be here. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
So Drew and Sara, we've just gave them the lead in as to how the Army Special Ops product came to be and a little bit about the D-Day, but I think it's important that you maybe provide a little bit of your own history and background. And as I try to say all the time, don't be humble.
Well, thanks,
Yes,
Justin.
please
I will
do.
let Drew talk about the start of all this, and then I'll finish up after he shares with you.
So, hey, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. So Sara and I actually met in officer training about 1,000 years ago in university when we were both ROTC cadets, right leading into Gulf War I. And so both of us had the great honor and privilege of serving in the U.S. Army as young commissioned officers. I was infantry. I served, got airborne ranger qualified, and served with light infantry in the 25th Infantry Division in Hawaii. And Sara was my superior officer. You could say still my superior officer. He outranked me. She was a UH-60 Black Hawk helicopter pilot, one of the first females to do so, and the first in her unit in Hawaii. And so we trained together quite a bit, doing kind of the air assault, light infantry, ranger training missions, ready to deploy worldwide on 18 hours notice, ready to go, tip of the spear sort of stuff. But we were very fortunate in that we didn't ever get the call. We both decided to get out and start a family before 9/11 happened. So we had a very different experience than the modern day warriors and the GWAT of the last 20 years and what's currently going on now. So we have nothing but the most humble respect for our current warriors. And really, that's kind of where this Army Special Operations salute came from, was really knowing that having served in peripheral roles and serving alongside a lot of these warriors, and we only knew peacetime, what they've endured over the last 20 years, the kind of sacrifices they've made, they deserve nothing but our highest honor and support. And this was a great opportunity to do that.
And what I love is when Sara tells a story about why people wanted to be assigned to Drew's unit.
You were newly married at the time, and Drew would go out in the woods and play Army, as we call it. And the weather would be bad. We'd have, low ceilings, bad conditions. But his guys knew that his wife, Lieutenant Sara Kellerman, was coming in because I hadn't seen him for a few weeks. I'm like, get on back home. So yeah, it was fun. There were several times I had a chance to fly Drew and his guys, and it was definitely a highlight for us for sure.
That's very rare to hear, that a spouse will fly another spouse in the military, and especially a platoon or a unit itself, to a different area for training. Holy shit. That's awesome.
It's exactly right. And I actually overheard one of my guys once bragging to a soldier in another platoon. It was like, too bad you're not in Lieutenant Kellerman's platoon, because we got to ride out no matter how bad it gets. We're going to get a helicopter.
Oh, that's amazing. God, I wish I had that when I was
we have
in.
a healthy marriage, because if we were in a, if he was in the doghouse, he might be out there still. We don't know.
What was that?
Right.
No one wants to get him from Kaneohe.
Exactly.
All right.
So we were just
Well,
talking
so-
about the tasting notes. One of the things you'll note on that special ops, it's a blend, right? So it's two types of bourbon and a rye.
Yep.
is it's bottled at 105 proof and called a Howitzer strength in honor of the Spectre gunship that the Air Force provides as support, and getting a lot of really cool response to it. And on the notes you picked up, you noted lemon and lime, which I'd not heard before, but one of the things that happens to the tongue is when you get it 100 proof or higher, the ethanol to trick the tongue a little bit
does
and will draw out extra notes of sweetness. That for any spirit, 100 proof is the magic number or up. And so interesting that you're picking out lemon lime notes.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that comes in the territory with me for anything that where there's a lot of high rye in any of the blends, whether it's just a high rye bourbon or just a straight rye whiskey, which like I said, I've been a fan of, and I've been finding a lot of those sweet notes. So obviously a lot of vegetal notes that come along with it as well. That's just the territory. But yeah, this one like that was very pronounced, but finding kind of the Spanish oak influence on it was really interesting as well, because it's got that kind of deep, dark, nutty kind of flavor as well. And it's really fantastic finding that as well, because that's one of my favorite oaks, to be honest with you. Like anything, like I'm a big fan of obviously like PX and Oloroso finishes that people are doing nowadays, and those are fantastic. So to find that kind of note in here is really fun. I love finding that kind of thing.
So they're American oak barrels, but they're made in Spain.
Spain, yeah.
We have the staves, American wood oak staves, sent to Spain. In America, the barrels are made in a very kind of American way, trying to hit some efficiency. And so a lot of times staves in the U.S. are kiln dried. And when you kiln dry the wood, you're getting moisture out, but you're not extracting a lot of the other impurities that are in there. And when the wood gets sent to Spain, it gets air dried in the sun, in the heat, for 2 to 3 years. And they will continually flush water over the staves, which sounds counterintuitive if you're trying to get the moisture out. But the water goes in, the heat, and it creates this environment for these very small bacteria to begin to grow in the cells of the wood. And the bacteria will go in and actually eat and consume those impurities and create a much more pure, cleaner wood. And that's why old school methods coming out of parts of Europe on making barrels is way different than the notes we get in the US, even from the same wood. And so then we asked them to make the barrels for us using the interior dimensions of an American whiskey barrel, 53 gallons, but use their exterior dimensions of a 59-gallon wine barrel, which means the staves are twice as thick. And because the staves are twice as thick, we get a lot of deep color action. We can go a lot deeper on the burn for the char level. And there's a heck of a lot more wood material for sugars and acids and tannin and vanillin notes. So we think it's kind of an interesting approach. The barrels are much more than what we'd have in the U.S., but it provides some of the flavor that you're picking up that makes us, we think.
Oh, and then
Can I
to speak
steal that for my
to
company?
the blend. Go ahead.
Brian's trying to thieve over here. It's fine, Adrian. Just
okay. Go, hey, Brian, go buy a barrel. Brian, go buy some barrels.
Down on the blend.
Go buy some barrels and then send us samples in 5 years.
Oh,
I think I can do that.
We'll do it. We'll trade.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Love it.
like that's my favorite thing. Like between distilleries, I've been fortunate enough to visit a bunch, even in Colorado where Brian is. And I'm always like, what you should do is take a barrel from Colorado, send it to Texas, have it aged there, have them send one to you in Colorado at a different altitude, do it there, and just see what comes out of it. I love little things like that. I think those type of experiments are some of the most fun and interesting things that can kind of come out. And it's really cool to see that is becoming a little bit more prevalent, more still in the craft sector, that people are doing those kind of experiments to try to have fun with it, just to see what comes out, because that shit is fun. And it's such a cool experiment to see what happens.
Well, you're exactly right. Those aging conditions, we might make 10 barrels on a given day, same mash bill and everything, and same barrel configuration. But where it sits in the rick house, whether it's the bottom barrel, the top barrel, over the course of time, they will develop different flavor profiles.
Absolutely. Well, let's see. Adrian, you had a question.
Brian, you had some MOS questions that Jennifer and I were not going to be able to answer, but Drew and Sarah may be up for them.
Oh, there you go, Brian.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the random question we normally throw out there after we talk about a few whiskey questions, get the heritage, get your guys' information. And we always like to throw
Are we going
Oh, yeah.
squirrel already?
Oh, yeah. I'm throwing it out right now.
The squirrel.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Squirrel brain. So this is the
Here we
whole point of the question. Get your mind off of the whiskey really quick. Try to get your interaction in a different way. This is a kind of unique question. If a squirrel had an MOS, what MOS would it have and why? And if people don't know what an MOS is, it's the military job and how they can perform those functions. And how would they do in combat, though?
The military occupational specialty. I would say logistics, hoarding in particular. I'd say creating caches of food, fuel, ammunition, and things in different spots.
How about raiding?
Special operations logistics.
Yeah.
Special Operation Squirrel. I think we just coined that term.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I think that's
Just stick a little camera on
a
it.
blend of a whiskey.
There's no way I would have ever answered that question correctly like that. That's a fantastic answer.
That was great.
You think about what they do, right? They kind of store stuff away. Like, it's perfect. They can be doing caches of weapons, food, fuel, and supplies.
Yeah, they just have it in their cheeks, and they're just like running along.
I was thinking military psychology.
Or psyops. Just sit at the top of trees and scream at you.
Yeah,
Not psyops, but psychiatry. Because they're always working with nuts.
Oh, see, I see what he did there. That's a good joke.
Perfect.
He goes psyops. He goes just have him sit outside someone's window and just like scratch on the glass. That was his answer for it.
You could also say maybe a seedy massage parlor.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of.
Are you hiring, Justin?
Well, they're always taking the nuts.
Yeah.
You could go either way. Like you could go one way or the other.
Well, that's fair.
This is a versatile squirrel. Let me tell you. I did not know this answer was going to go that way. That's fantastic.
I want to hire this squirrel.
Right?
Well, fuck.
So I got a question.
You got to follow up that shit, Brian.
I'm visualizing a squirrel cam. We need a squirrel cam next.
It's just always on. It's just like always on, like while we're doing the podcast. Like, what's he doing right now? And we turn to it, he's just staring at nothing for about 5 minutes.
All right.
Adrian, whiskey questions.
I know. Well, since we were kind of just a little off topic, I wanted to ask
only a little,
Sarah and Drew, if you had any military experiences that involved whiskey that at a place you were possibly stationed or something like that you can remember drinking a specific whiskey or anything like that.
That's an awesome question. I've got a good answer. Do you have one?
Mine's top secret. I can't give that.
Oh, okay.
I've got my clearance. You're good.
No, one of the things that's a very integral part, particularly the combat arms parts of the military, is something we call ceremonial toasts. And anytime you've got a gathering that's formal to semi-formal to even sort of informal, casual, there's always going to be an opportunity to do a toast to the fallen, a toast to your comrades, a toast to the spouses, a toast to families, a toast to, toast the president, the commander in chief. So those ceremonial toasts are just integral. And so I recall very distinctly that there was always a focus on making sure we had an American whiskey on hand. And it was always going to be a Kentucky bourbon, which was funny because at the time I was a huge Scotch fan and I would just kind of go with it because everybody wanted to do the American bourbon thing. But gosh, I'm trying to remember exactly what we used. Honestly, I was with an infantry unit where you just take whatever you had and you pour it into an old boot and you mix in some stuff and you drink out of the boot. So quality wasn't exactly the highest priority. It was kind of more volume and how quick you can get schlitched while you're doing, toast to the fallen and stuff. So it's a terrible answer.
I think
that was good, actually.
No, I mean, I didn't know that you would drink out of the boot. So that to me is kind of a special thing too.
It was special. It was very special.
It might be a little
Notes of leather.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing back my hangover moments from the Marine Corps. Yep.
There you go.
There we go.
Hey, thank you for your service, Brian. What'd you
Yes,
do?
Thank you.
I drove a tank that floats in water. I was an amphibious assault vehicle operator.
Oh, right
Awesome.
on, man.
That's cool.
D-Day hat tip to you guys. That's awesome. Well, we got something special coming. Hopefully, it'll be a hat tip for you guys.
I think we got a little pervy of that recently, of what may be coming. So
Fantastic.
We're working on it.
yeah.
Right on.
So I had a question, but now like it changed, kind of learning a little bit about how this all came to be, which I think is probably my favorite like distillery origin story is to hear it just happen on a campfire. I think the simplicity of that and just like sitting around like making those kind of decisions and realizing like this is what I want to do. My original question was about like what other, brands and distilleries you guys enjoy, but do you all remember what you had around that campfire that night? Like which brands and like which distilleries that you guys were drinking?
Remember, I thought we were making beer at that point.
I remember that. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah.
She also said he went to the liquor store. He went to the liquor store and like he picked up his
Right.
Yeah.
I don't
Unless you were drinking beer.
It was probably a Scotch, I want to say, because it was at
Yeah,
the Kellerman house.
It was most likely a Glenfiddich.
Yeah.
Morangi, something like that.
Yeah.
I think at the time I was on an Abalur kick.
You were.
Okay.
And
You
I
brought
think
on
we
Abalur
were
bottle towards the end.
drinking Abalur and smoking pipes.
Yeah.
Tobacco.
Tobacco. Yeah.
Yeah,
It
let's
is
clarify
Washington
for the people
State,
that
so
are
we gotta
just
clarify
listening.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was a Scotch. It was a Scotch. And Justin's like, no, this is good, but we can make better. And we all were like, what are you talking about? Well, let me tell you. And then the next thing you know, here we are.
Here we are.
Scotch is notoriously dirty whiskey. Yeah, the way it's distilled and
it is
the process that's involved, and even now because my processing of whiskey has changed so much since we've started the distillery.
Mm-hmm.
If I have even like a half a shot of Scotch, I just have wicked headaches the next morning because it's a different process of distillation than what we have become accustomed to. But that's the history of Scotch and the technology they had over the last 1,000 years,
and are still using in a lot of these distilleries that they have not changed at all. And some take that as a characteristic that they love. I do. My family's from Scotland. Both my parents were born and raised there, so I was kind of raised on Scotch. And when you said Glenfiddich, that like brought me back to the first time I ever had it.
Grew 3 sizes when you said
It's
that.
huge right now. Like it was. I mean, and that's what I remembered having. And then kind of coming over to this bourbon side has been an adventure. But that's really cool to hear that you guys were having a little bit of Scotch around a campfire, kind of coming up with this. And Drew, is that something you still drink, or did you get away from single malts at this point?
Great question. I'm very much follow the same path that Justin did. We got so used to there's a process that we use in the distillation finishing of our whiskeys that cleans a lot of the impurities out, and we got so used to making it and sampling it and using it and enjoying our own whiskey. When we go back to Scotch, we tried that once. We had a 21 year, I think. Justin brought a beautiful 21 year in a box. Glenfiddich, and we enjoyed it, and we were just absolutely destroyed the next day. We're like, no more. We just can't do it. It's like our systems got too used to the clean HTC stuff.
And I wonder if there's something to that, because Adrian over here,
I tried
yes.
3 single malts, and while they taste lovely, I always have a headache the next day. And I told Martin, I said, I think it's because it's a single malt. And he's like, no, it can't be.
Well, it's just because I'm trying not to get her scared off so fucking quick.
Yeah. So I don't want to give up, but I think I'm on the same
She
train.
just got into it, and she said she loved the next day. She goes, Martin, I feel like shit. I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. I'm like, they were American single malts #1, so it was a little difference compared to like what they do in Scotland as far as the process goes, slightly. And obviously the barley is going to be slightly different unless they're sourcing from some of the same people. Like I think the one you actually had was Golden Promise, so that would have came over from England. Yeah,
if it's hot distilled,
Yeah.
If it's pot distilled and they're running deep into the tails and they're getting the long chain congeners, I mean, your liver is going to have a hard time processing them.
Yeah.
You get the headache, just like we have a lot of sugar. We run all of our whiskey through a column. Once it comes out of a pot still, 14 plates on the column, and we can really dial in the flavor profile we want and extract out those extra bit of impurities. And just that one extra step, in addition to controlling the flavor, will eliminate a lot of low-end stuff. Now, people will tell you, that's where you get all the flavor and the depth of character and the conversion of the barrel. Yeah. But if you are starting with a really clean product and you're going for a certain kind of flavor profile and using, very specific techniques and steps and aging, then you achieve the flavor you're going after without necessarily the headaches on the back end.
Now, this first expression that you're doing is a blend. Will the others in this line also be blends?
We think so. Yeah.
Okay.
We think so. And we think actually that the product line as it grows is going to outstrip our ability to supply all the liquid. So far, everything we've released has been all of our own distilled product, distilled and aged and blended all in-house. But we think that it's going to become something that strips that out. Now, I have not said this publicly a lot. I have said it on a couple of occasions, including when I was asked to speak on the panel in January. And that is, I think we as distillers, Brian, bottlers, blenders, whatever process we're involved with, we are about to enter probably what will be the most amazing arbitrage opportunity over the next 24 months, because there's so much excess bourbon laid down in Kentucky and more that is going to hit the 4 and 5 year age profile in the next 12 months. And not anywhere near the demand. I mean, there's 14 million barrels of bourbon in Kentucky right now. Historically, they've never had more than 3.8 in any given year. And another 2.6 million are being laid down this year. There are not enough livers in the world to consume all the bourbon that's been laid down.
I know. So I was going to say, what is that, like 5 barrels a person in Kentucky?
Yeah, just in Kentucky. Just in Kentucky. So, and we're seeing the prices drop. Prices for whiskey are dropping, bulk whiskey, like crazy. Like last year, we were being offered barrels for $4,000 or $5,000. Now barrels are being offered for $2,000 because a lot of people who bought them and invested are, just bankers. So there's some cool opportunities, and there are a lot of craft brands that have been very successful in going out and finding cool products and making their own blends. And so as we just face the reality that, assuming the special ops and the Salute line is as popular as indications are, that we're going to have some cool opportunities to make some really cool blends. Cool. And just try and do it in an authentic way.
And with what you just said about making your own blend, read a little bit about your cask club, your membership there. It sounds like that's an opportunity to do that also.
Yes, on a small scale. So you see the barrels behind Jennifer and me. They're 10-liter barrels. They're, about the size of a basketball, 2.6 gallons. And people join as members, and they tell us what they want. We fill the barrel. Bourbon, rye, single malts. They're making gins. They're adding flavors. We have 2,500 active members right now and growing every month. And we win awards. They win awards. They're involved with us every step of the process. We've got a couple patents on the process already of this entire membership program around customized spirits production for individuals. And it's just a cool way for the consumer to get involved at a much deeper level than they ever thought possible before.
Yeah, I especially love the piece about the customer or client getting to try the whiskey at different stages of the process, and then the aging. They can come in and make an appointment, and they can try it at 6 months or whatever the timing would be. So I thought that was.
We have some people who come in every Friday and try their barrel.
See,
they get changed.
I would love that. I would be with you guys every Friday.
We have
I work in a distillery actually, so I love that.
We have some customers, husbands and wives, who have their own barrels, and we actually have on the intake form if they want to give permission for others, like friends or family, to come in and sample, and one couple I know in particular, they have very strict instructions that their spouse is not allowed to sample their other barrel.
That's great. That's so
I
good.
love that.
We had,
I love that.
We've had a couple divorces, in which case we received the final decree awarding the barrel to one spouse or the other in the membership. Crazy. We've had some people pass and die, and so we sell them the barrel, and it's very personal for people. They become invested in what they're doing and the experience for them and their family and friends.
What's the time range usually?
We had 17 award winners from the American Distilling Institute be awarded in our Cask Club program. So it's important that we make good.
Well, yeah.
So they're very exciting. Yes.
That is so cool. I love that. Love
that.
Well,
I'm just a little bummed that
every spirit has a story at Heritage, and each barrel is actually named like you name a boat. And so we always ask when someone says, I'm a Cask Club member, I'm like, tell me the name of your cask. And we'll spend 20, 30 minutes talking about why they named it that or who they dedicated it to and the story behind it. Someday I'm going to make a coffee table book that has.
Oh my God, that'd be amazing.
I was going to say, you gotta document that.
That'd be a great coffee table book.
Yeah, it's amazing to actually be a part of someone's story and to sit there and listen to it. And then while you're sipping on their whiskey, it's pretty powerful.
It is, yeah. I'm just a little bummed that all I got was a dog in a divorce. I didn't get a cask. So
you married the wrong person, man.
Yeah, I did, obviously.
Obviously, yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yep.
I was going to share one supporter, Jennifer and Justin, host a member mingle at each of our tasting rooms, our 5 different tasting rooms, and they call up the award winners and give them awards around their neck, and it's really neat to see. And like Jennifer said and Justin said, they're vested. They're very proud of what they've done. Yeah. And people are asking, "What'd you do? Did you put some vanilla bean in there? Some, I think one of my favorite stories is a group of firefighters who went in on a cast together, and they put shards of their axe handle into the spirit.
That's awesome.
Which is just a really cool bonding, sort of thing. For every military cask, we've got an American flag placard on the cask. You can identify those casks. It's a really neat program. And that was also born the infamous night of the whiskey and pipe smoking, tobacco pipe smoking evening.
Mm-hmm. What's the weirdest thing people have ever wanted to put in there?
Yeah, they wanted Seattle rain. I said, well, you have to go get it.
You go fetch it.
Right. Mostly we have to sometimes push back on the names because they're displayed publicly, and that doesn't happen very often, but
I remember early on one guy wanted to put on his placard, touch my wood. Funny. Let's talk about it for a little bit,
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to do?
Let's talk about plan B.
Yeah. We had one of our guys whose family was also from Scotland. He actually was our piper when we would do Friday night pipes, and he's a professional bagpiper, and he'd come play, kind of welcome the weekend. He was like the Pied Piper for the weekend for us in our Gig Harbor store for a couple of summers. It was pretty cool. But he brought over from Scotland a 2,000-year-old, like semi-petrified bunch of peat wood that he wanted to put in his cask. And that's got to be the most kind of unique, bizarre, like wild thing. Didn't make any difference at all in his whiskey, but it was a cool story. It's like,
and only a Scotsman would have that. Like, there's nobody, no one else in the world would have that. Just like, he's like, listen, this is what I want to do. He's like, I'm going to bring over some 2,000-year-old dirt, and put it in there. Like,
what would you name your cask?
Oh, you can't ask me that question. I honestly, you know what I would? So I've talked about this. We do a lot of like lives on Instagram. That's kind of like what we do. We go in with our community that we've built up around. And I have a thing sometimes, and I'm like, guys, this is my last pour. I'm only going to have this one more. And then we get to talking, and then we get to hanging out, and there's good conversations. We're having good cigars. I'm like, there's going to be one more. Just one more last pour. So last pour, I think that's probably what I'd call it, the last pour. It's definitely what I would call it, just because
That's
it
a
makes
nice
sense.
name. I love that.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
you thought it was gonna be something else, didn't you, Adrian? Joke's on you.
Just wanted to know. I knew it would be creative, so that's why I had to ask.
Yeah, no, that'd
I
be
don't
it.
even
Yeah,
know what I would name mine, but I want to do it now.
Mine was Mama's Little Helper.
I like that.
Cool. I like
Well,
that. Yeah.
Wait, what was that in reference to?
Rolling Stones.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Adrian, yours should just be Adrian, and then just have a picture of Rocky on
Yo,
it.
Adrian. We'll just call it
Yeah,
Yo, Adrian.
Yo, Adrian. I like that one. Yeah,
That'll work.
that's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
That's what everybody says anyway.
So we'd definitely be a little remiss if we didn't talk to you guys a little bit about the Tribal Beverage Network. I think that's really great, and I was had the opportunity to kind of go over it in the last couple weeks here, as we knew we were going to be with you guys. You guys want to talk a little bit about the inspiration and everything that kind of started with that?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. When Jennifer and I were in D.C., we worked for the senator from the state of Alaska.
Mhm.
Jennifer and I both spent time in Alaska. She grew up there. I was there for a few years. Alaska has 274 tribes alone. Lower 48, we have 270 federally recognized tribes in the lower 48 states. Me, having grown up in Washington, we have, as part of the curriculum in the public schools, sections and big chunks of Pacific Northwest history involving the history of tribes and the cultures and those kind of things. So I grew up kind of learning about this. And then being in DC, being involved in policymaking and legislation and appropriations for, at that time, what our constituents. Then going to law school, studying federal and Indian law, just got, exposed to them on a regular basis. And understanding that the tribal membership, they make up about 1.9% of the U.S. population, but they are among the most impoverished in some areas, and they're really working very hard to make up for a lot of lost time. At the same time, even though Native American population is so small in the U.S., they have the highest percentage of service in the U.S. military out of any demographic group in the U.S. They're very proud of that service and history of service. We were approached in 2015 by one of the tribes in Washington, and they said, "We'd like you to help us design a brewery." And I said, "Well, we don't make beer." And by the way, the craft beer market, if you look at the data, I would not invest in craft beer if I were you. Spirits is up and coming. And I said, if you want to do a brewery, you should do a brewery and distillery combined, take advantage of the shared resources. So they agreed, and we spent several years planning. Got to within literally 24 hours of breaking ground on that. And the Bureau of Indian Affairs sent them a letter saying, you can't build this distillery on your property because of this old federal statute from 1834, which prohibited distilleries in Indian country. So we had to go to Congress. We went back to Congress in April of that year, me and the tribe, and we worked to get bills introduced in the House and the Senate. And over the course of 9 months, lobbied, had House and Senate hearings, got through the full process, got unanimously passed off both the House and Senate floor. The president signed that into law. So we got a brand new bill from start to finish done in 9 months in Congress to repeal that statute. And as a result, now tribes are wanting to start to build distilleries. So we've got one that one in Washington is up and running. We've got one in Arizona we announced last September. Just announced one in Oregon with the Coquille tribe 2 weeks ago. That took 2 years of negotiations with the Oregon Liquor Control Commission. And that's a big deal because, as you know, Oregon is one of 17 control states. So This was the first approval of a control state regime with the tribe recognizing and giving tribes the right to build a distillery on their property and a tasting room in the casino. And so our model with TBN is we're partnering and we are working with tribes to open branded tasting rooms in their casinos and their development with this high foot traffic and jumpstarting their ability to get product going, and also allowing the tribe to exercise sovereignty, collect the state tax on spirits, which is the highest of all the sin taxes, and just one additional economic value added component for tribes to create another amenity to draw people to their properties. So we're very proud of it, and we think in the next 5-6 years we may have 100 branded tasting rooms because there's 524 casinos in the U.S., tribally owned casinos, and more added every year.
That's incredible.
When we were designing Heritage Distilling Company, we've talked about Drew and Sara and their background. Drew's Scottish background, and they have deep roots in the state of Hawaii. And Sara comes from the Minnesota region. My background is heritage, is Norwegian, and Justin is actually a dual citizen in Italy, who he just got that in March, but our last name is German. So, and collectively, the four of us, we love our heritage. We love talking about it. We love celebrating it. We love learning about other heritage. And so when we were kind of sitting around talking about what are we going to call this distillery, it was a very easy choice for the four of us to say it's Heritage Distilling Company, and every spirit has a story, and we want to hear about your stories. And so when you walk into one of our distilleries, you're going to see, our heritage on the walls with our family photos and our stories. But when you walk into a tribal Heritage Distilling Company, it's their opportunity to tell their story, because every spirit has a story, and it is remarkable to be able to be a small part of theirs, to be able to help them tell what they want to tell. So our partners in the Tonto Apache tribe in Arizona, they may be interested in maybe a prickly pear vodka or something that they grow in that area. And then some of our other tribal partners may want to have a specialty whiskey of something that makes sense to them and their tribe. So being able to release their own whiskey labels or vodka labels under their own brand and help them do that with the support of all of our award-winning spirits and knowledge is really exciting to be just a small part of it, and to kind of take it to the next level. And they're already in the liquor business. They're already selling liquor in their casinos. Right. They're already in the business. There's a lot of dry tribes in the United States. We don't approach tribes; they approach us, and it is one of those things that we are very conscious about. But they're already in the business, and we think they should take economic opportunity and make money.
Yeah,
and not any
absolutely. Plus, we kind of would sound like it builds a little bit of legacy too, if they're, using things that are, I don't know what the right word would be, but are special to them within the spirits that they're making. I think that would be legacy building for sure.
Yeah, so Martin, you talked about moving barrels around, right? So imagine Tonto Apache, based in Arizona, up at altitude. Takes a while to get up there. In fact, you have to drive through a very small town called Rye, Arizona, to get to Payson, about 15 minutes outside. And then Coquille in Oregon, at sea level on the Oregon coast. And barrels being aged in both locations, being moved, aged, swapped, blended. And imagine that now across state lines in all sorts of different environments, and the ability to create this like never-ending opportunity of trade, cooperation, packaging, co-packaging, all the while telling kind of a much bigger story.
Yeah, that's great fellowship.
Yeah,
not easy though. Very complicated.
Yeah, it is complicated. But fun, and I think inevitably, Adrian really put that really well, like building that kind of legacy. We kind of joked about like someone putting in 2,000-year-old peat. But that is something from someone's like heritage. Like over my shoulder, that's my clan crest. It's a Graham crest. So I always have it around. I'm very proud, and I think that's a big thing for people to be able to be represented, and be able to have their heritage really represented. I think that's such a great just origin for you guys' company. I think it's fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're working on it every day. Every day.
Yeah.
Every day.
Every day.
Just gotta employ that squirrel. Get that squirrel, man. He'll help. He's there to work.
Squirrel, right?
He's there to work.
Maybe your squirrel is. So there's two more questions we have for you guys, and we're just going to end it up to say thank you and to let everybody know this podcast will be released on the 4th of July week to showcase your guys' spirit, to say thank you for everything that you guys are doing for the military service and continue to do to this day and moving forward. So thank you guys for that. But two questions. One will be regarding that, but the other one is, what's your favorite whiskey experience you guys have ever had? Justin, Jennifer, Drew, Sarah, and why? Is it a recent memory? Is it a past memory? Could be from when you were a child all the way up to recently. So what made that specific experience special to you?
Yeah, so I'll go first. One of our lines that we carry in our tasting room only is called Elk Rider. And my family comes from the Olympic mountain region of Washington State in the Quinault Valley. And my great grandparents had 17 children, and they tamed and domesticated wild elk. So when we were kind of trying to figure out what are we gonna name one of our whiskeys, we were looking at these glass negatives, and we're like, oh my gosh, they're riding elk, and we're talking about elk riders, and most of them were women riding these elk. And so we have a line of whiskey called Elk Rider. And my best whiskey experience is I have on my bar here, our bar at home is called Pour Decisions, P-O-U-R.
Oh, okay. I like
Established
that.
in 1997 when we
I
got
love
married.
that.
So Pour Decisions. And I have this bag, and it says, Dad, here, drink this one. And I always have an Elk Rider whiskey in there. And my dad and mom live probably, 2 minutes away. And my dad walks in and he opens that bag and pulls out that Elk Rider whiskey. And he and I will sit down and have a little glass of whiskey. And that is my favorite moment. I am lucky enough to have many of them with my dad because they live so close. But those are the moments I live for, is to drink the Elk Rider whiskey from our heritage.
I feel that, because I very much value when I get the opportunity to have a whiskey with my dad. It's not to be matched.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. So Justin, Drew, someone.
I've got a harken back to my military days back in the early 90s. One of the reasons I chose the military, I was raised by two very influential men in my life, my dad and my brother. My brother graduated from the Air Force Academy back in the late 80s, flew F-16s for about 13 years. And there was a time when I was at Fort Rucker, Alabama, in flight school for 13 months. And my brother was in Georgia flying the 16. And he was able to get me up in the F-16. I filled a barf bag the entire flight, worked really hard to stay conscious. And he was evil because he paired me with an instructor who was giving another pilot a check ride. So we're doing Israeli 45s and all the things you see in the new Top Gun Maverick movie, right? It's like punching me. To make matters worse, he was like, Sarah, you should really have, you should have your strength for right before the flight. So we went out and had a burger and fries right beforehand.
He's an asshole. Got it.
Yeah, completely. Air Force guys. So that night at the Air Force Officers Club, we also had an award ceremony for the best pilot in the unit. My brother ended up winning that award. So it was just a highlight of my sibling journey and a military career to see him be brought up on stage, receive that award. And then the partying commenced in the Officers Club. And I remember test tubes of said whiskey that were being ingested at a high volume. And then about midnight, I remember bracing myself on what happened to be a general's car in the parking lot. As the general walked out, luckily I didn't vomit on his car, but it was in my Army, flight suit. So that was a highlight for me. That's my whiskey story.
That's the best one.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that's great.
And Sarah, this is the brother who actually won the Top Gun award.
He did, yeah. He's
Holy cow!
kind of a big deal.
Sarah comes from a family of aviators and accomplished aviators from the military. Yeah,
And they raised one too. They have a son who's now a pilot. So
That's amazing.
Yep.
I'll
right there.
I was thinking about it. What would be really a really iconic moment, whiskey moment, and I have to say, there's been many, but one that stands out is very recently was this last December. Sarah and I were invited very last minute to fly out to Charlotte, North Carolina. We had just launched the Special Operations Salute Army SOF edition. And we had the Green Beret Foundation, one of our very first benevolent organizations we're working with, said, hey, we're going to be hosting a Whiskey and War Stories event in downtown Charlotte in 2 weeks, and we don't have a whiskey lined up yet. Do you guys want to come pour samples of your new Special Operations Salute? We said, is that a trick question? Of course. So we jumped on a plane. We flew out there with a bunch of bottles and set up. And this is brand new. I mean, we launched this thing in late October. We were doing pre-sales. It was maybe some of our first bottles coming off the production line that we packed up, put in our as a checked luggage, flew over to Charlotte. And while we're there, we don't even know what this is going to be about, who's going to be there. Turns out both the commanding general for U.S. Army Special Operations Command, 3-star general, shows up with his entourage. And one of his junior generals, the 2-star general in charge of all Army Green Berets, both show up with their entourages to give a little talk to the civilians and other folks that showed up for this event. Well, after everybody cleared out, these 2 generals and their entourages were standing around, and they asked if they could use one of our bottles of whiskey. Now, we hadn't talked to any of these guys yet because they were so busy doing what they were doing. And we were just sort of, standing there helping, telling people about our whiskey and giving people samples and letting them buy it and so forth. And they asked if they could use one of the bottles, which they took, and they went over just a few feet from us, and they formed a circle. They brought out some very high-end sort of drinking vessels that they use, and they poured out. This is the very first time we'd seen this done, like anybody pouring besides us. They poured out generous slugs into each glass, and they raised it as a toast to the crew of the Task Force 160 Special Operations Aviation helicopter that had gone down in Cyprus a couple days before with all the crew been killed. So these were their soldiers that had been killed, and they were toasting using our whiskey to honor and celebrate as a ceremonial toast to these guys. And that's where the concept of a ceremonial toast and the ritual sips using these whiskeys. So we thought, if that isn't a sign for where this is, what this is for, and it was a very emotional, powerful moment. And then we got a chance to talk to them after and share some whiskey with them as well. And basically got a chance to taste our own Special Operations Salute out of the bottle with the 2 commanding generals for the units that we made this for. So that will stand out in my mind forever as a unique whiskey event.
Yeah. That kind of is a goosebumps kind of story.
Yeah. Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whiskey, we're finding the whiskey that has a higher calling. And what we tell people all along is that the barrel will tell you when it's ready, and the barrel never lies. And therefore, you have to just kind of do with it what you will. My favorite whiskey story is hard to pick any one in the past because we do this every day. And, after a while, you start to just kind of have to focus on the business and then come back to the whiskey. But coming up this Father's Day next Sunday, I'll be with my mom and brothers, and my dad passed away 3 years ago on Father's Day suddenly. And my mom and dad had a barrel that they call Life's Good Spirits. And we had that barrel bottled up, and the bourbon that's in there is really good. It's fantastic. So I'm going to crack one of those bottles open on Sunday and pass it around, and maybe have a new memory to create. So, because every spirit has a story it's a double entendre we chose on purpose when we founded the company.
Well, that's absolutely amazing. I mean, all your guys' stories give such in-depth meaning and give the passion and just all around joy of what you guys do for the military service and for your families and other people's families all around the U.S. Heritage, the heritage alone is something that you guys are prominent about and excited about, and it's absolutely amazing to see. And I'm honored to talk to you guys. I know Adrian and Martin are as well about this whole thing. I come from a lineage family myself from whiskey, so I can't really say much. But what you guys are doing now is awe-inspiring. And thank you for doing it and to continue doing it. And I don't even think I have to ask my last question, but I'm just going to throw a small little perp out. Are you guys doing anything on the 4th of July with your families or at the distillery?
Yeah. So typically at 4th of July, we don't occupy our distillery space. We find it important that our families who work for us, we have 95 employees, that they go and that they're with their own families. Typically, we actually go to Drew and Sarah's house and watch the fireworks. They live on the water, and the most beautiful firework display is seen. And there's usually lots of children running around in a fire pit, and it just kind of all come together and just take it slow and really kind of be together and reflect on why we're all here, right? What we're doing.
Absolutely.
Supporting each other.
Really appreciate everything you guys have talked about today. For me, what I've learned about whiskey is what you've all talked about. Is I love the camaraderie. I love the stories. I love the people. And that's the only reason I keep coming back. So I'm glad you guys came to talk to us today.
Well, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Brian, thanks for your service and, being involved in a brand yourself. And I'm curious, love to hear more later on about your, you talk about the lineage of whiskey in your family, what that means entirely. But yeah.
You can see what I'm pointing at.
And then the company you're involved with, right?
Yes.
It is not easy. It's not easy to start a brand from scratch in what is one of the most competitive industries in the world, where you're up against some of the biggest bucks and all sorts of shenanigans, and a system that is not efficient and in fact has been set up to not be helpful or easy to use or navigate. So
no, but we should talk about that, and because I'm writing up some legislation currently to get it changed. So
Wow.
Well, one of my magical powers is getting laws changed. And
perfect. I'll send you what I wrote. It's about 500 pages.
And, since we opened 13 years ago, we have averaged at least one statutory change in Washington every other year. We were one of the first states to actually codify direct-to-consumer shipping of spirits to the home in Washington in 2015. And so there's a model to be used around that.
I want to talk to you so much more about this.
So this podcast could be 3.5 hours.
Oh man,
it's his hobby. He loves it.
I'm a kid in a candy shop right now, but unfortunately, we're going to end this. Our sponsor is 10th Mountain Whiskey. So want to thank them for allowing us to come on this podcast and talk to amazing companies like yours, first and foremost, Heritage. And it's just one of those things that, again, we're honored. Thank you so much. And just remember, everybody, a bourbon with friends can change the world. Have a great day or night.
Cheers, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cheers, you all. Thank you.
That's it for this episode of Bourbon with Friends. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. While you're at it, leave us a review to make it easier for others to find the show. You can also check us out on Instagram at Bwfpodcast. Thanks for listening.